recording. And the other thing I would say is since this class is only a month long, the recordings are important and the notes are important because you can come back to them and you can keep working on them that way. And you're not expected to master the GRE in a month, especially since we only get 4 hours a week. And generally people studying for the Gmat have lives and responsibilities and all that fun stuff. So what I'll do is I will start with going through some integrated reasoning questions. I sent you guys the videos for that. It's just to kind of expose you to what the structure of the integrated reasoning section. The real big highlights are you don't need to get every question right to get a perfect score, but you don't even need to answer every question to get a very good score. And so what a lot of people do is as they work through these integrated reasoning questions, they recognize the ones that give them the most trouble. And they just say, when I see one of those, I'm going to skip it and come back to it if I have time. Well, not come back to it if I have time. I'm going to think about it and then say, like, I might just skip this. 3, maybe being prepared to skip up to 3, but most of the time, the most effective way to think about it is just certain types. Hey, I'm not gonna do this one. I'm not gonna spend my time on it. And then increase your chances to get the other questions right, because some of these can really suck up a lot of time, especially if you don't realize what to do right away. The multi-source questions are usually the ones people decide to bail on, just because you've got to integrate stuff from multiple data sources. So that's something to pay attention to, though, when you're practicing. It's important to think like, okay, which ones are really giving me a hard time? And Gmat Prep Club does have they collected all the official Gmat integrated reasoning questions. And let me see if I can find that. And I'll share that with you guys. Now, I would say this, just make sure that, these come from official practice tests as well. So if you think that you might be running into one of those, I would click on the link and just make sure, like, see where the source is from. If it's from an official Gmat practice test, then you want to skip that one. But the other nice thing, and I'll just share my screen real quick so you guys can see. It also tells you the question type. So 2-part analysis, table analysis, graphics interpretation. So that can be very helpful too. Because then you can kind of get a sense of what you want to spend time on and what, if there's something you want to improve on. Again, integrated reasoning it's not as important as a quantitative and the verbal. So it's something that maybe you just want to be familiar with so that you can get a decent score, but I wouldn't go far beyond that. Okay, so we'll take a look at a few of those and then we'll go back to the meat, the quant and the verbal.
Random question.
Yes.
We get to, I feel like, so critical reasoning, I feel like that's kind of one of those things that, not integrated, but critical reasoning in the verbal.
Mm-hmm.
Is it me, or is that kind of one of those things that, for the most part, it doesn't get too nasty?
The way I would put it is that it can't get too much harder because then you just can't do it in time. Like, what critical reasoning is you have to identify an argument, and then you have to see how the argument is chained together with, like, okay, here's the support for the argument, and you can either work your way forward or work your way back, right? Like, if this is my conclusion, how was it built from the sentences in there? Paying attention to the clue words that tell you, like, since or however or therefore,
Yeah.
building that argument. And then you have to answer questions about how you would strengthen and weaken it.
Yeah.
That's a lot to ask. If they make it too much, like if they make the text too much more complicated, it's just not, it's not solvable anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And then they also have to make it something where they could, no one can like argue with them, like, oh, this is subjective, like this answer could be right, like multiple answers could be right. So they have to be kind of clean, like easily defended, because I'm sure they get people want to like sue them every single test administration for arguing over questions, and they have to be able to defend that pretty well. So yeah, there's kind of a cap on how bad or how tough they can make those critical reasoning ones.
Yeah.
And if you feel like it clicks for you, like you get the hang of them, then they're not so bad. Like they're all kind of about the same difficulty level, I guess is one way to put it. Yeah. Let's take a look at, I'll share my screen here. This one might be hard. Oh no, I think we have enough space here to do this one. And some of these, if they're not clear enough from the PDF, we can still cut and paste them from Gmat Club. All right, so this first one here, some studies of how it was that Prussia resisted the wave of European democratization in the 19th century point to Russia's unequal distribution of land ownership as the principal explanation, and political figures from areas in Prussia with high inequality in land ownership tended to be the staunchest opponents of democratic reforms. However, arguments that focus only on those figures' conflicts with landless people ignore the fact that political figures are not only representatives of socioeconomic interests, but also political actors embedded in particular contexts that shape whether they support democratic reforms. Historians must take such contexts into account if they hope to explain what transpired in Prussia during this period. Okay, so this kind of, I mean, it's almost reading comprehension, right? Let's see, what did they categorize this as? Two-part analysis? Okay. So they categorize it as two-part analysis. And we select passage for the statement that best describes the purpose of the passage as a whole, and then the portion in boldface for just strictly the statement. Before we get to answering it, though, I think it's important to try to like get the most context from this, get as much from it as we can. So some studies of how it was that Prussia resisted the wave of European democratization. When they start off with some, and then it says that they point to Russia's unequal distribution of land ownership. What do you think is going to come next when they say, some say it is, Prussia's unequal land distribution?
Give a counter argument.
Yeah. You don't say, some say it is this, and I agree. I mean, I'm sure someone's done that somewhere in the history of human writing, but almost all the time it's some say it is this and they're wrong, or they're like, there's something wrong with that argument. Here's a better one. So we're getting set up for something that kind of disagrees with this. All right. If we think in those terms, then we're like mentally prepared for whatever they're going to give us. And political figures from areas in Prussia with high inequality in land ownership tended to be the staunchest opponents of democratic reforms. What's this sentence doing?
The first one?
The second one, and political figures. After that first one.
Setting you up for like the first
kind of
idea.
Yeah, it's a premise.
We didn't get to the disagreement yet, did we?
Yeah.
We know it's coming. Now it's important to notice, because sometimes when you know it's coming, you're like, you think it's already there. It's not there. We're not there yet. We didn't get the disagreement yet. So we know a disagreement's coming. But this isn't the disagreement yet, right? Part of the clue is that it just says and. It doesn't say nevertheless or however or instead or anything like that. So we don't have a disagreement yet. So this is kind of the they say, right? And political figures from areas in Prussia with high inequality tended to be staunchest opponents. What does that sentence do with kind of the they say part? It's kind of agreeing with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we know that we're eventually going to disagree, then we could call this a concession. We're calling it a concession because we know, like, okay, you're conceding a point to the other side before you get to yours. And shockingly, here we are. However, and then we get to the disagreement. Arguments that focus, and this is the bold one, and that's important to note. Arguments that focus only on those figures conflicts with landless people ignore the fact that political figures are not only representatives of socioeconomic status, but also political actors in particular contexts that shape whether they support, well, let's say contexts that shape their support for democratic reforms. Historians must take such context into account if they hope to explain what transpired in Prussia during this period. Okay, so we had, they say, a concession for them. Now we get to I say, right? And then what's this sentence do after the I say? Historians must take such context into account if they hope to explain what transpired in Russia during this period.
Recommendation. So like the counter argument is in the bold, and then kind of it's the prescription, the historian. So this is my counter argument, and then in order to
yeah, like a recommended fix. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm not thinking at full capacity right now.
It's okay. Yeah, you seem a little bit tired.
Exhausted.
Yeah. Okay, well then this will be a good video to rewatch. Yeah, sometimes if you're tired enough, you don't even remember being there. Okay, so we've got a recommended fix coming at the end. All right, I feel like now you don't necessarily have to do this every time for every passage in IR, but we're trying to teach good habits here. If we're trying to match the well, I guess let's go with this, Danica. Why don't you take us through this? If we have, let's do green. Which one of these do you feel more confident attacking right now?
Probably the first one.
Okay, the passage as a whole?
Yeah.
All right. What do you think here? Let's go through these. To offer an alternative to the standard explanation of a particular historical event.
I mean, yes, but it feels really broad, which makes me think that it'll probably fit best. I mean, like I'm keeping that out there,
Take a look. I believe all of these would be pretty broad.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I would also say the passage. I don't know. It kind of is I just think right now the bulk of the passage is the first half, and it says to offer an alternative, and so it's like you're not really getting an alternative. It's more of it's stating a common claim.
I would say this. It is offering an alternative. It's not to the standard explanation. It's offering an alternative to what? Well, it's criticizing the idea of only looking at it as a socioeconomic conflict, right?
Yeah.
How did Prussia resist European democratization? It was unequal distribution of land was the principal explanation. And then they say, and there's some evidence to support that. Okay. However, arguments that focus only on those, so they're providing alternative, it's not explanations to a standard, or not, they're not providing alternatives to the standard explanation, but they're saying there are alternative things to look at. And actually, you know what? I should even say alternative isn't even the best word here. Because alternative does imply like it's either one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not really what they're doing here, is it? They're saying you have to take multiple things into account.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put not one or the other. Danica, does this make sense?
It does, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say like alternative, it's not the best word there. To provide evidence, okay, that's pretty vague, so we can't really say whether that's good or not. That economic issues, okay, that's something we can check. We're at the root of a particular historical event. What do we think about that? So we can check that. We can see if they say economic issues were at the root of a particular historical event. And in the case of what I'm thinking as I go through this, I'm going to say resist democratization in Prussia. Just so like they made it super vague, I'm going to make it less vague because I know what they like, which historical event they're talking about. So is there evidence that economic issues were at the root of the resistance to democratization of Prussia? Is that the main idea of or the main purpose of the passage?
I don't know if they're showing evidence. That's the part where I'm getting caught up.
What would it look like to show evidence?
They would state a bill, some type of treaty, something like that, some example. Versus, I guess this is an example, but they're saying they're making a claim about Prussia, but they're not really showing an example of, kind of exemplifying it.
Yeah, or maybe even some data, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not really giving us, evidence for it. So yeah, I think that's the big problem. There is an important distinction in Gmat. This applies actually to critical reasoning and to reading comprehension, and in this case, integrated reasoning. But it's the difference between stating and explaining.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really important distinction to make in these, because the reason it's in there so often is that it works so well. And the reason for that is that if you state something, you are talking about the same exact things as if you were explaining them. If I let's say that I had like a crazy poster behind me. It would be one thing for me to say, hey, look at my crazy poster behind me. It would be another thing for me to explain how it got there, like how I got it, like the story behind it, right? However, the passage, if you were to take what I said and put it in text form, the passage would be not identical. The passage would be about the same stuff. I'd still be talking about the poster, but there's a difference between stating and explaining. Mentioning versus, detailing. And so we're not providing evidence. That would be like explaining it.
Yeah.
They're just claiming in this passage that economic issues, and I wouldn't even say we're at the root. Economic issues had something to do with the resistance to democracy in Prussia. Danica, how do you feel about that?
I was thrown off by evidence when I first read it, because I was sort of with Ramon thinking there's nothing behind it. It's sort of just somebody's opinion almost in the passage. So yeah, I skipped on that one because of the evidence part.
The evidence part was what you found especially lacking. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, and then just to be thorough at the root, like we would want to see something that says like this is the most important, or this is the primary, or this is
Yeah, like this is the
something along
impetus
those lines.
for, yeah.
Yeah, and the if we look at the they say I say, the they say is that the big point is economic, but the passage itself sets that up as a partial explanation, right?
Mhm.
Right, saying like no, there's other stuff too, and so at the root we wouldn't say that. Okay, good. To criticize a certain type of argument about a particular historical event. What do we think about that? Criticize. What does criticize mean? To say like it's wrong in some way or not good enough, right?
Mhm.
Now, if we're criticizing an argument, what argument is being criticized here?
That it was solely due to socioeconomic factors, that Prussia didn't get wiped into democracy
Yeah,
as quickly as the rest of
it's
them.
saying that that's a partial explanation, not a complete one, right?
Mhm.
So it's criticizing that about, and then our particular historical event, we're going to put, now we're going to simplify it down to RDP for resisting democracy in Prussia. Okay. Criticizing a certain type of argument, and that is that it's all, I'm going to put all money about that. Does it criticize that it was all about money?
It didn't criticize it. It just kind of states it. Kind of, it's just the context to why.
Yeah, thank you.
Does
Sorry, Amazon.
Does it criticize the argument that it was all about money in any way?
Not in the passage, no. Well, not really at all.
I would say that it's criticizing the argument by calling it incomplete.
Yeah, but it wasn't about it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't saying it wasn't completely, but it was saying there are other factors involved, not the only one.
Right. So I think that we would call this criticizing the argument by saying it's incomplete. Not saying that it's wrong.
Right. And then, yeah. And I guess it's wrong for the passage, right? I think.
Well, so we're going to get to that. Yeah. It's definitely in the passage. Like what I'd like for you guys to see is like, okay, it's definitely in the passage. How do we decide whether it is potentially the passage or the portion in boldface? How do we choose between those two? Because I think we can say now it's definitely in the passage. Are we criticizing the argument that it was all about money? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely says that. So, how do we choose? I mean, there are multiple ways to approach this, so we want to kind of find a way that's like the safest.
I don't think it's the whole passage.
Yeah, obviously I chose passage in there, so I do want to change it to the boldface one.
So let's think of it this way. One of them is much more narrow and specific in its location, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would be easier to check.
Yeah.
So if it's in the portion in boldface, then it's easy. We can say, yeah, it is. If it's only there. And if it's not only there, then it's the passage as a whole, right? Like it's easier to prove it or disprove it in the more narrow one, in the more specific one, right? So that's where I would look first. And then if it is, it stays in there. And if it isn't, I would move it to the passage choice. So that criticism, is it just in the bold? Well, arguments that focus only on those figures' conflicts with landless people, this is a reference back to the socioeconomic battle, right? So far, so good. We are at least talking about the right thing. Now we have to see if that, that criticism is explicitly stated here. Ignore the fact, okay, now it sounds like we're starting to criticize. political figures are not only representatives of socioeconomic interests. Here we get to the argument, right? Here we get to the criticism. The criticism is they're more than just socioeconomic actors. They're also political actors embedded in particular contexts that shape whether they support the reforms or not.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all in the bold? Yes. So we can say that it's the bold-faced one. The criticism is in there. So there we go. Okay. Is the overall goal of the passage to criticize the motives of political figures involved in a particular historical event?
No.
This is a sneaky one though. So I'd like to hear why it's not.
Well, I guess for me, it makes it, as you read the one, I think the one next to it, in my head, the last one is going to be the passage one. And so then keeping that in mind,
Yeah, same.
like, I guess, so I'm going to play the comparison game. So the comparison game here is the last one kind of, so if you read the passage, it brings up the context, it brings a counter argument, and then it concludes with, this is the best way to approach this. Historians must take a certain context into account, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of is it kind of sums up, it puts the argument into a nice little bow. I think that's what it's saying at the bottom. And so it makes it kind of clear that the penultimate one is not it.
Okay. So
yeah.
I want you guys to improve your skills on identifying the correct answer. So that's good. But I also want you to improve your skills on identifying incorrect answers and why.
Right.
So if we look at D, it's to criticize. Notice how C and D both have criticize.
Yeah.
There's definitely a criticism in here. So when you see the word criticize, your brain's already going like, okay, maybe. But criticizing what, right? Is it criticizing the motives of political figures? No. That's the wrong criticism. That's not a criticism that happens here. We're trying to explain the motives of these people, but we're not criticizing them. We're criticizing other people who are trying to explain those motives.
Yeah. And then kind of to that, Blake, so I would imagine if it was that answer, it would be something along the lines of the political figures in Prussia were corrupt, etc., and then explains why. Then that would be a little bit more of an inclination towards that answer, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Or if we wanted to make this answer correct, one way to fix it would be to criticize the explanation of the motives of political figures involved in RDP.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's where the criticism is. It's criticizing the explanation. It's saying it's too narrow.
Yeah.
So then we go to the big picture one. Yeah. And at this point, if we've kicked out all the others, then we kind of know what the answer is. But let's see if we can kind of piece it all together. To encourage historians not to approach a particular RDP again from too narrow a perspective. Now, why is E the whole passage one, whereas C is just the boldface one? Because I feel like that's another difficulty to consider here.
I keep thinking it feels like all encompassing. So it's saying, it's taking obviously the first thing and not disputing the fact that it was a socioeconomic thing, but it's also saying, there are other factors involved and you shouldn't discount those other factors.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So Raymond, or Ramon, sorry. Ramon, I'll just email you to catch you up on what we do
Just rewatch
going forward. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'll see you guys.
See ya.
He said he wasn't feeling well, so, and I believe
Don't
him.
blame him. Yeah.
Okay, so we're back to how do we choose between these? How do we know which one's the narrow one and which one's the big picture one? Like, how do we know for this one that it's not, that this isn't the portion in boldface?
Because it's after the fact. It's after the bold. It's like the last sentence after that.
I would say because the sentence after it, yes, tells
Mhm.
like that's a big part of this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So we couldn't support this answer choice with just the boldface, right? We need more. And especially that last sentence. Okay. So let's take a look at this one. I think this one got cut off a little bit. So what I'm going to do is pull up the Gmat one.
Yeah. I did my best to get it all on one screen.
It's okay.
Yeah. And when I got through, I didn't finish it all. And I was thinking, oh God, like I have so much to work on. But now that you keep saying like most people will like choose to skip 1 or 2 or even 3, I'm like, okay, I feel a little bit better. Not that I want to do that, but I was like, okay, 30 minutes. Am I just like lagging behind and I need to like pick up the pace? But I feel a little bit better now.
No, it's so I took a GMAT a while back. I took, yeah, just to kind of see what my score would be because I hadn't done it in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I don't need to study the IR. It's not that important. And I tutor the ACT and ACT science. It's kind of like IR, but like like a baby version of it. But
Yeah.
whatever. I've been doing a lot of that, so that'll be easy. And I don't remember exactly what I got. It was like 750 or 40 or whatever. And but I did not do well in the IR. And I was like, oh my, yeah, this is a mess. And realized like, okay, I should have employed some strategy. I just kind of thought like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Uh, and it definitely humbled me a little bit there. So don't feel like, yeah, I mean it's very rare for people to be able to have a real shot at getting all of them right, and that's why you can get a perfect score without getting everything right.
I did not know that.
And so all right. So we've got a grade book. Have you reviewed these on your own, by the way? Some of
No,
them?
not after the fact. No.
Okay. So we've got a bunch of grades. And one of the things they did to kind of be jerks is this. We actually have to convert them all to numbers, right? So, oh well. Potentially have to convert them all. And then they talk about computing the average of their grades on each of these respectively. And then rounding up.
Yeah, this is the last one that I did. And I was just like, and I'm going to answer these real quick. So honestly, I
Okay.
didn't even like review this.
All right. Well, then let's just talk about it and see
Okay.
if we can solve it now. Each student who did not receive an A on the final project did not receive an A on either quiz. So you tell me how we would do this. Like what information do we use to make this decision?
Did not receive an A on the final. Did not receive an A on either quiz. Is it okay to just eyeball it in the table?
That's really all we can do, right?
Okay.
So tell me which students we care about. Let's start with that.
So you student who did not receive an A on the final did not receive an A on either quiz. So that means like they didn't get an A at all. It's not like one or the other on the quizzes, right?
Each student who did not receive an A on the final project, who are those students?
Jean, Sigrid, and Vig.
Okay. Did not receive an A on either quiz. Yeah, so it means they did not get an A on quiz 1 and they did not get an A on quiz 2.
Mm-hmm. And Jean did get an A on quiz 2.
Okay. So
that's a no.
yeah, we don't know if it's Jean or Jean.
Could be Jean. Yeah.
All right. So good. One down. Each student who did not receive an A on either quiz did not receive an A on the final project. Oh, now let's do that in red. So who do we look at there?
We got Mia.
So who did not receive an A on either quiz?
Mm-hmm.
So we look here, Mia. Yep, Mia. Okay. So I would say let's look at quiz 1 and work our way down, right?
Yeah.
Phoebe got 1 on quiz 2.
Sietska. I'm gonna.
Sure.
All right. Cool. Sigrid. Stanley.
Did
And
Stanley?
Vig.
Oh, Stanley did not get an A on either quiz, and Viggy. Okay, so each student who did not receive an A on either quiz did not receive an A on the final project.
That's a no.
Because of Mia, right? Already. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Each student who got an A on paper 1
Got an A in the course.
only 2 of those. Okay. And how do we figure out who got an A in the course?
You have to go back to the numerical part, right? Or the paragraph.
We got to give it, yeah, we got to use the grades, right? 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
You get an average, yeah. All right, so what's Phoebe?
Presents the grades. Each student's overall grades was determined in computing average of the first paper. So of all 5, basically. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I would say is, well, I can divide them all by 5, or I can say, what's the minimum to get a grade that will round up to A? Well, it's out of 5. It's not 20. 20 will give you, 20 is a perfect score, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does it take to round up to an A though?
3.5.
A 3.5, yeah. This would be it, right? If we
Yeah.
get a 17.5, that would round up to an A average, right? Because we have 5 grades. So what did I do there? I said, sum over number of things equals average. And I'm saying, well, if I want to know the average, instead of having to calculate that each time, why don't I just solve for the sum? Because that's the number, that's the average times the number of things. Right. So I'm just saying I only want to do this calculation, that part of the calculation once. So now I can just find the sums, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the sum for Phoebe?
Where's Phoebe? All right, I got 4, 3, 3, 4, and 4. So 12 and 6, 20. Over 5, 4.
I think it's 18.
Did I do that wrong?
7 plus 7 is 14. 14 plus 4 is 18. Do you see what I did? Or
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I did do that wrong. Okay. Yeah.
so what I like to do instead of
Mhm.
trying to just keep adding them to the pile is I like to it's almost like splitting the deck in two. 4 plus 3 is 7. Okay. 3 plus 4 is 7. Okay. And then I can combine them. So I'll like bunch them up and basically do it as a bunch of two numbers plus each other instead of doing a running tally. Just for me, the running tally, I screw it up because
Yeah.
I'm changing the numbers too fast, right? Like 7 plus 3 is 10 plus 4 is yeah. So like I'm the person who in Vegas when they start handing out all the small cards in blackjack,
Yeah.
I just have to hope the dealer is like honest or my friends are like paying attention.
Yeah.
Especially if they start putting out like an ace or something. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, you're like, I'm out. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm I'm a math tutor, but I can't do this.
No
So
counting cards. You're not supposed to do that.
yeah. Well, the counting cards part is actually easier than keeping track of your score on blackjack. When they give you like threes and twos, and because the dealers are so fast because they are used to it, they keep going. But anyway, so I try to figure out ways to make my calculations as easy as possible. So we got 18. Okay, well Phoebe made it. Phoebe's
Yeah.
got that A, right? All right. What about Stanley? Well, one thing I could do is just see like Phoebe barely made it. If
Mhm.
Stanley's below, he's not going to make it. Right? So
Yeah, like
far
you're cut
Stanley's
off. Yeah.
matching it. Stanley's ahead. Oh,
And then
ooh,
we got
that's
a
bad.
C. Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like he's probably not going to
Mm.
make it, but if we wanted to
Right.
be safe, we could say, okay, 4 plus 3 is
16.
7.
Mhm.
7 plus 6 is 13. 13, 17. Oh, he just barely missed it.
Yep. All right. Don't have to do any more.
Now think about it though. If you had skipped one of the nastier IR problems, you probably could have gotten this right.
Yeah. Yeah, this one doesn't bother me. It was, I think the next one that I knew I spent too much time on it, but I was like, okay, I just want to like finish this section.
Mm-hmm.
Where did I put that PDF?
Okay, let's see if I can. This will be a test of fitting everything on one page here.
There we go. Okay.
How is the size of this tab 1 and tab 2? Should I make it bigger? Is this okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right. And then let's see if we can get.
Yeah, it was this one, the one right below it. The assembly plant line.
Is
Mhm.
it which one of the following statements? Or is it, oh, there's two of them, huh? There's two questions that go with this. All right, let's see.
So which one of the following, and then there should be one for each of the following statements at the assembly line.
All right. Yeah, okay, I think we got it all. All right. So the Moslem plant, the assembly line consists of 3 conveyor belts, 3 inspection posts, 1 at each belt. In year 10, 15 workers were employed directly. 3 of these were at inspection posts, 1 at each post. Okay. In year 10, so I'm going to keep all the year 10 stuff here. Had an output of 250,000 units and a profit of 15 million. All right. In year 11, it was modernized. The conveyor belt speeds were increased by a fixed percentage. The assembly line's administrative unit was restructured to maximize efficiency. Okay. Each inspection post was automated. 3 workers who formerly staffed the positions were laid off and were not replaced. So instead of 15 workers now, we've got 12 workers, don't we?
Mhm.
Okay. There were no other personnel changes, so we're still at 12. All right. Which of the following statements is supported by the information about the assembly line and the assembly line modernization plan? So on the assembly line, conveyor belt speed is directly proportional to total annual output of assembled units. What do you think about this one? So I would say this: if we're going to say something is directly proportional,
Mhm.
we better be able to compare it, right? So I want to find out about conveyor belt speed, and I want to find out about total annual output. Let's start with total annual output. What do you think?
So my thought was taking the 3% from year 12, or from that first line. And then it's only a 1% increase for the resulting profit. Am I going too far? I feel like I'm reaching.
Well,
Grasping for straws
let's
here.
look at total annual output. What do we know about the total annual output?
It increased by 3%.
Right, here's the resulting increase in output. It looks like the total output, the
Oh,
total annual
5%?
output, that's 5%, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So
Output of assembled units.
now we need to say something about the conveyor belt speed.
Yeah, looking at this, I can't see what the comparison is.
Like you can't see the text?
No, I can see the text, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I can't, from the information given, I can't make an inference of
This
how
is the only
conveyor
thing I
belt-
can see, yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
don't
I
know.
could see conveyor belt speed increase. So the conveyor belt speed increase led to a 3% increase in output.
Out of a total of 5.
So what they're saying is the increase in conveyor belt speed led to a 3% increase in output. We don't know what happened to the conveyor belt speed though. Right? They could have doubled the speed and that made it 3% faster. They could have made it 1% faster and that increased the output by 3%.
Mm-hmm.
So we just don't know. We can't say anything about the direct proportionality. All we know is that whatever they did to the conveyor belt increased output by 3%. whatever they did to the inspection post automation, which we do know, right? Firing those people,
Mhm.
that led to a 2% increase in output. And so then we get a total 5% increase in output. But we just don't know like how much that conveyor belt speed increase, what that was. So we can't say it's proportional because we'd have to have a proportion we could set up, and we don't.
Right.
Administrative unit restructuring accounted for the greatest increase in profit. Tell me where to look here.
The third row. So administrative unit restructuring.
Is this what you're
1%.
talking about?
Mhm.
Okay. What do you think of this answer?
And the greatest. I know I selected that one.
That's not a good enough reason.
I know. Increase in profit.
We know we're looking at the right place.
Yeah. I'm thinking I'd do it comparison wise. So take like the 1%, the 4%, and the 5%, and then multiply or get whatever like the dollar amount is based on the $15 million profit from year 10.
So we've got administrative unit restructuring. We know that here, and what we care about what it does to profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It accounted for the greatest increase in the dollar amount of profit. So what do we do with that? Well, it's definitely not the biggest percent increase in profit, right?
Right.
Inspection automation was more. Conveyor belt increase was more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are percents of the same total amount, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the profit, whatever the profit is, 5% of that profit's from inspection post automation, 4% of it's from conveyor belt speed increase, and only 1% from restructuring, administrative restructuring. So we can say that that's not right.
Right.
It's the smallest. Now, if you were to say, like, what part of that process of finding that info, where did you get stuck?
I think I was comparing it to the column to the right of that. But obviously those aren't related on.
Well, those are would have to be a
Yeah.
different question, right? Total cost to implement. Yeah.
I think that's where I got stuck. But I was also running out of time, so I was like a little frazzled.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this makes total sense because it was, like you said, it's just the lowest percentage on that column. There's no way that it could be the greatest.
Yeah. Okay. So you kind of lost your place, like where to look, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Conveyor belt speed increase accounted for the greatest increase in profit. Tell me where to look for this one.
The same column, looking at the 4%.
Okay.
And we know that's not true because it's less than the 5% right above it for inspection post automation.
Yeah. Okay. What about D? Conveyor belt speed increase accounted for the greatest increase in annual output. Notice we have to note it, like we have to check between output and profit, right?
Mhm.
Those are easily confused because they're right next to each other and the wording can look almost the same except for the last word. All right, conveyor belt speed increase accounted for the greatest increase in output.
That's technically true. So if you look at the first column, It's 2% for inspection post and then 3% for the conveyor belt.
Okay, so we like that. Let's switch colors. It was more than inspection post automation, and
Mhm.
administrative restructuring didn't increase output at all. It just lowered costs. So I think we're good. Yeah, I think we like that. But let's check E, because you never. Well, when you're trying to be thorough, you want to keep checking. So
Yeah.
what do you think about E?
Inspection post automation, increase annual output of assembled units. No. For the same reason we just said.
Inspection post automation, annual output. Yeah, sorry. No.
Like, I know I can do all this. It just like is going to take me more time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's normal. Right? Like my son is in sport, he's doing sports stuff. He's almost 9 and he plays a lot of basketball. When he was younger, he couldn't even dribble. Now he can dribble. And now what do we want him to do? We want him to work on his crossover. And like, you originally he's just like, patting the ball.
Yeah.
And then you just get better at it, and then you can do it faster and you can do it more efficiently. And then that's just what it is. Okay. Is question number 2, is the size of the question okay on your screen?
On that one, no, it's really tiny.
Okay.
But I have it pulled up.
So what I'll do here is I'll just make that a new question. Control X. And we'll take okay, how's this?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
All right. For a given production year, let Q denote the total output. So whatever. They're just being difficult now. I'm going to put output Q and N is number of workers directly on the line. So we need Q over N. Q is the total output in assembled units. And then I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, unchanged. So I need the ratio, the change in the ratio, and then I need oh, this is year 10 and year 11. So what numbers would I need to be able to answer all 3 of these?
I was looking at the 15 workers compared to the 12 because they fired 3 of them.
Okay. So that's helpful. I'm going to make N, I'm going to say N10 and N11 because I just want to have it clear in which one's which, right? I don't want to get confused. N10 will be at year 10, right?
Mhm.
So what's N10? What's N?
Number of workers, 15.
And then N11 is 12, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, how about Q10 and Q11?
Aren't they both 25, 250? Oh, year 10 had an output of 250.
250 or
50,000.
250,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then output increased by 5%. So that's 262, 500. Is that right? I just did 25 over 2.
Sometimes I'll just divide by 20 if I think I can get that faster.
0.05. Yes, I was right. Okay. Yeah. 262, 500. Okay.
Mhm. Okay. So we also don't actually even need to be super precise to answer these, but we've got them. So year 10 is 250,000 over 15. And we need to know if it's 10,000. Well, one thing is I could do 250,000 divided by 15. That kind of seems like it
A little rough.
would suck.
Yeah.
So how about this? Instead of saying, is it equal to 10,000? Why don't I do 10,000 times 15 and see what I get?
Mhm. Yeah, we know
And
it's
then
more
compare
than
it
that.
to 250,000, right?
Yeah.
So no, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. And what we could do if we want to just kind of like clean it up a little bit, I can see like a common divisor here of 5, right? So I'll just put it over 3. So it's 50,000 over 3. And then if I need to break it down further, I can. So this will be year 10. And we'll switch colors just because we have the multicolors to do it. What's our year 11 going to be? 262, 500 over
12.
12. Now, do you think that the Q over N is unchanged?
No.
15 to 12 is a what percent decrease? 3 over 15. So 1/5. It's a 20%
20%.
decrease.
Hmm.
Yeah. So a 20% decrease is not the same as a 5% increase.
Right.
Q over N remained below 30,000 in year 10 and year 11.
Yeah, I would believe that.
Well, it's definitely true in year 10, right?
Yeah.
And once we find one example of it, it's a no, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I were to estimate this, it's about 17,000. Because 17,000 times 3 gives me 51,000. So, but we don't need to go that far. We know it's a no.
Do you find that these doing the integrated reasoning, does it help you elsewhere? Like, because obviously these are supposed to be in depth and they're giving you, I guess, technically more time to finish these compared to like the quants or the verbals. But like, do you see a direct correlation in something maybe in like the verbal section with these? Like maybe reading comp or critical thinking?
Maybe. I mean, yeah, but I wouldn't count too much on it, I guess is what I
Okay.
would say. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't count on it too much. Um, Let's see. You know, the fact that we haven't used total cost to implement makes me suspicious. Like, I want to go back and check. It doesn't matter for these ones for number 2, but I think it matters for number 1. I don't know if it'll change any of our answers, but we should check. It would now. What would it affect? Would it affect output? No.
No.
But would it affect profit questions? Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we could check those two. Although since we know that there's a correct answer, then I wouldn't worry about it. But that's something to keep in mind for total cost to implement. Yeah. And then let's see, I don't think that affects any of the, because this is let Q denote the total output in assembled units. That's the output. N is B, N is the ones directly employed. Yeah. So that wouldn't affect any of our answer choices.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Were there more questions to this one?
I had one more.
Okay.
Go back.
Was it another integrated reasoning question, or was it more questions on this?
It was one more question on that question of integrated reasoning. Yeah.
Okay. Is it in, let's check the, oh, in year 11. Oh, okay. This might be, so what I was concerned about was the fact that we hadn't used cost to implement.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't need it for any of the other questions, but that would make sense if the issue is that we just hadn't used it yet. So that might have been it. Let's see. Let's get a copy here. All right. For each of the following statements, select yes if it's true based solely on information provided. Otherwise, select no. Okay. Now, what I would say here is that since we haven't used total cost to implement, I would suspect that it matters here.
Yeah.
But that, sometimes that, noticing that will help and sometimes not. So the assembly line generated a profit of 16,500,000, and this is for year 11, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How do we calculate the profit for year 11?
So you do the 15 million times 1.1, so 10%. And then you subtract the total cost.
So 10% increase in profit. So I would do 1.1 times 15 million, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So is that it?
And then you subtract the total cost. So subtract 160,000. So it would be 16.5 million, then subtract the 160.
So what do we get? If we do 1.1 times 15 million, it's going to be 16.5 million, right?
Mhm.
Minus 160,000.
And thankfully,
So,
we don't have to do that math.
right. So just sneaks in under, right?
Yeah.
All right, the total output from the assembly line. Okay, so at least we don't have to worry about a cost to implement here, right?
Mhm. Increase by 25,000 over total output. No, it would have been, because 10% would have been 25,000 and it's only 5%.
So total output increased by 5%, yeah. And so 5% of the total output was 250,000. So a 25,000 unit increase would be a 10% one, right?
Right.
Okay. So now what? The administrative unit restructuring accounted for 1% of the total profit.
No, because the total profit of year 11 was 16.5 million. And the total cost was only 15%.
Say that again?
Yeah, so it's talking about year 11. So
Uh-huh.
we know that the total profit increased from 15 million to 16.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And the total cost of the admin was 15,000
Mm-hmm.
out of 16.5 is less than 1%.
I would even say that we don't necessarily need to go there. The administrative unit restructuring accounted for 1% of the means times
Mm-hmm.
the total profit. It's 1% profit. It's not 1% of the profit. It's actually 10% of the profit. Because if the profit's 10%, 1% is 10% of 10%. Does that make sense?
1%.
I wish they hadn't used
10% of
these
the
numbers.
total. I know.
How about this? Let's say that we had 20% profit, 20% growth in profit from something. Okay,
Mhm.
the profit increased 20%. If 10% of that, or if there was a 10% profit from thing A that you did and thing B that you did, 10% each, wouldn't you
Mhm.
say half the profit comes from A?
Yeah.
You would say half the profit, or I shouldn't say that, half the increase in profit, right? Half the increase in profit.
Mhm.
You would not say 10% of the increase in profit, and you wouldn't say 10% of the profit either, right?
Say that one more time.
All right, so this is a 20% increase, right?
Right. So I got the
10% of
half
that,
part.
yeah, 10%
Mhm.
of the increase comes from A and 10% comes from B.
Yep.
Half of the increase in profit comes from A.
Mm-hmm.
50% of the increase in profit comes from A, right? Now, that's not telling us how much of the total profit it is. And we can't, like, what they're doing is they're hoping that we'll just see 1%, 1%. Oh, that's what it is. But it's a 1% increase in the profit. That's what this says. It's a 1% increase in profit. It's not 1% of the total profit. And it sounds like what you were doing was actually calculating it. And I was trying to show you a shortcut, but if the
Yeah.
shortcut's confusing, then let's look at the proof way, because then that should make it make sense. What's the new profit? Well, it's 10% more, right?
Yeah.
Minus 16,000 or 160,000. So it's 16.5 million minus 160,000. Okay, fine. Well, I guess it's not so bad, because 500,000 minus 160,000. So we're at 16.340
3-4. Mm-hmm.
million. Okay. Administrative unit restructuring accounted for 1% of the total profit. No way. This is 1% of the increase in profit, which would be, what's the increase in profit? 1.5 million. So 1% of 1.5 million is going to make it 0.015 million. That's 1% of the profit. I don't know. Is that making things better or worse?
So are you just trying to point out that?
It's way too small.
Yeah.
A 1% increase in the profit it's 1% only of the increase. Well, that means it can't be 1% of the total, because the total is a lot bigger than the increase. How about that?
Okay, that's clicking. Yes.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
erase all this confusion. Yeah. So 1% increase. It was a 1% increase. It's not 1% of the total profit.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
I need all these like mental shortcuts, because like my first inclination is to just do all the math, and then I can see it. Like I'm a visual learner, so I like need to have that on my piece of paper. But yeah, I do need a shortcut. Would be very helpful.
Okay. Let's look at some more of some of the other questions you wanted to go over, since it's just you tonight.
Yes, please.
All right, so this is the PDF you sent me.
Mm-hmm.
I would say this: if you type the integrated reasoning ones into the Gmat club,
Yeah.
it'll take you to them. So you could go over all the ones you wanted to go over. I would say that of the explanations, I feel like the integrated reasoning is the least awesome, because just far more people come to the forums for verbal and quant, and so if you have 100 people like writing and voting on the best answer, it's going to be better than like 7 people. So
True.
So the quality is a little lower, but it can still be very helpful. So let's see, we've done some of these. We did that one. Oh, I should probably share my screen with you as we go through it.
Because the data sufficiency ones just kicked my butt.
All right, how about this slope of a line?
Yes.
All right. What do we see here?
So mentally I saw like the X and Y plane, and just putting those on there. And it said slope. Do I need to worry about like mx y equals mx plus b yet?
Let's
Or
think
in
about
there
it.
at all? Okay.
Let's think about that. What does y equals mx plus b have in it?
The y and the x-intercepts.
Well, it doesn't have the x-intercept ready to go. It has the slope and the y-intercept. That's why they call it slope-intercept form.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be helpful to think about it in those terms, but maybe not yet.
Okay.
So, but I think visualizing what lines could look like. Hey, they lie in the xy plane. Well, what are the possibilities? One is that they're parallel. One is that they intersect each other. Another is that they're actually the same line, just overlapping.
Perpendiculars.
Well, oh, and yeah, we could intersecting could also mean perpendicular, but that's a very specific type of intersecting.
Okay.
I'll redraw this one here because I don't want it to look perpendicular, but I do want it to intersect.
All right. I'm going to draw this with you.
So these are our options. Lines P and N intersect at the point 5, 1. Oh. So we can we can cut down our options, can't we?
Mm-hmm. So we already know it's at least intersecting.
They're intersecting, yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So it's definitely not sufficient on its own, because if we want to know if the slope of n is less than the slope of p, well, we want to know then who's going uphill and who's going downhill, right? If they intersect,
Yeah.
right? The one downhill has a negative slope, the one uphill has a positive slope. I guess if they were perfectly aligned with the axes, then we wouldn't have to worry. Like neither one has a positive or negative slope. One slope is undefined and the other zero. Fine, whatever. We're not going to, unless they give us reason to think of it that way, we're not going to deal with it. So, so we have two lines, they meet. Unless they're perpendicular and one has a slope of 0 and the other has an undefined slope, one's going to be positive, maybe very slightly, and negative, maybe very slightly, but we're going to have a positive and a negative most likely.
Mm-hmm.
The y-intercept of line N, okay, so now we're going to have to start thinking about this. So the y-intercept of line N is greater than the y-intercept line of P. Okay, so if I'm thinking my y-intercept line is here, I guess there are kind of two options for my line. Here, this is one option for that line that has a y-intercept at P, or here, right? Approximately. I could twist them, but like I could have a positive or negative slope here, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
So potentially those are the things I can look at. All right. And so what I'll say to keep this straight in my head is I'm going to say, I'm going to put B sub n. So the B for y-intercept, right? Like y equals mx plus b for line n. And then I'm going to put one that's a B for line P. So I've got that, right?
Yep.
And then I have the intersection point at 5, 1. So that's out here and up 1.
We're going to do this. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I'll make that blue.
This is for N. This is for P.
So if that's what we have, my 0.51, now I don't know how high the y-intercepts are. I just know that the y-intercept for n is above the y-intercept for p.
Yep.
And that's okay. That's really all we need to know. Because if I were to slide that 0.51 up or down, it doesn't really change what's happening. But what I do know is this. Line N now looks like this. And I know line P looks like this because I have my 2 points. I know who has the bigger slope now. The slope of N is negative, it's going down, and the slope of P might be a little bit positive. It could also be a little bit negative, but it's definitely not as negative
Not
as line
as
N.
negative. Yeah.
Yeah. So together they work, they're sufficient, but not alone.
And we couldn't have done number 2, or we could have had number 2, but not knowing where the intercept line or the intercept point makes it difficult to find out the slopes. Right?
Think of it this way. You need 2 points to get a line. You need 2 points. You have to have 2. 1 point
okay.
won't be enough. And so what did 1 tell us? 1 told us a point for each line, right?
Yeah.
And then the second statement, it didn't tell us a specific point, but it just said, hey, there's a point on N that's higher than the equivalent point on P. And then that allows us to finish the 2 lines. We don't know exactly where they are, but we know relatively where they are compared to each other. Make sense?
Yeah, like when I do it out with you, it makes total sense. When I try to do it alone, I think I just get bogged down by maybe I don't think there is as much information as there is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. You don't realize how much they're giving you. So what I would say is practice squeezing as much out of it as you can. And in geometry stuff, a lot of times you're just going to have to draw things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think when I would actually start doing algebra stuff, because you went to the y equals mx plus b, which is the algebra coordinate geometry stuff.
Mhm.
I wouldn't go there first. And I'm
Okay.
trying to think of when I might instead go there first. I don't know. I just wouldn't go there first, like most of the time. I would assume that I'm going to need to do some kind of drawing of some
Okay.
different situations.
Yeah, I went in to studying thinking that like this data sufficiency would sort of cover maybe like one topic, but it seems to cover like a bunch of stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's
I
an
don't,
approach. It's an
yeah,
approach to many different types of questions. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, I think I need to obviously study like the basics first, or like get reacquainted with them of like all the things that I've come across. Like when we were talking about the on Tuesday, what were we talking about? Oh, the absolute value. I was like, ooh, totally forgot about all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Is there like, am I taking the right approach of like starting with like the building blocks of the basics first? Or is there something that I could sort of speed myself up on for this sufficiency stuff?
It's
Because it feels like not like a crapshoot, but it just feels like they're testing
a lot.
Theoretically, yeah, a bunch of stuff.
They are. And so you don't want to go too focused on, hey, I'm just going to work on fundamentals forever, because that
Right.
won't change your score as much as you would hope. However, you do want to get some practice in that's specific on certain topics. And so that's what the official guide is good for. If you're going to do geometry, find a bunch of geometry in there and do that. It's I think even better than that though is the Gmat club, because there's so much in there.
I know. I was looking at that over the weekend before I took the test, trying to get, some confidence going in.
There's so many.
There's so much in there.
So how about this? You and I can I'll look up this question, and then we'll see what it pulls up when we look up similar stuff. All right, so here's the question, right? Lines N and P lie in the XY plane. Is the slope less than that? All right, so here, let me pull up the annotation. Here are the tags. Not the most helpful. Right, like coordinate geometry, okay, fine, whatever. But let's see what we get. And but then it'll give us Kaplan. Okay, so what we're gonna do, what I think is the best thing to do, is to go back to the page I showed you guys where you can search, like you can input all the tags you want, and then
Yep.
let's just do coordinate geometry source official Gmat. So I think I have that saved here.
Yep. Okay.
Question search. Yep.
Do you do the year for like your source, or you just do official?
Just
guide?
official, because it doesn't change that much.
Okay.
They rip us off. So let's find official. You'd think I'd be better.
Mine just said source official guide. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd think I get better at finding that, since I have to look at it all the time, but I don't.
You're like, it's my actual job.
We'll do difficulty 600 to 700, and then was it coordinate geometry?
Okay.
Was that what it was called?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are, and let's see what it shows us. Official guide, official guide, official guide. So it looks like they dropped this eventually in the official guide. However, the fact that it was in here from official guide 10, 11, 12, 15, it spent some good time in here. In the figure above, the point on segment PQ is twice as far from P as from Q. Okay. So we need to find the point that's twice as far. Does this also have a proportion tag?
Yes.
Oh, were you thinking about that?
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. Now, when I see twice as far or twice as much, I'm actually thinking it's also 2/3 or 1/3, depending on how you look at it. Twice as far means you could split it up into thirds and say, oh, twice as far means that 2 of those thirds go in one pile and 1/3 goes in the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when they say twice as much, I'm also ready to go, especially once they give me a clue that it might be a proportion, that twice as much means 2 out of 3. So let's figure that out. The point on segment PQ, that's twice as far from P as from Q. So it's like a 2-to-1 ratio, right?
Yeah.
Or 2/3. Now, if I know the total distance, I can say, oh, 2/3 is equal to the total distance, and then X will be the distance I want. Let's call that D, so we're not calling everything X. And then I need to find the total distance of that line, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I find distance? Did I tell you what distance is really the formula for?
The two sides.
It's just the Pythagorean theorem. The distance formula is the Pythagorean theorem. They just make it look different.
Oh.
Like
Okay.
it absolutely is identical. They just renamed some stuff.
Okay.
And I wish teachers would tell you guys that. All right, what's the width of this triangle, of this right triangle we just made?
So we're at 0 to 3.
Okay, and what's the height?
Negative 3.
And so the hypotenuse is the distance.
Mm-hmm.
So 9 plus 9 equals, let's say it's the distance squared, but c squared. So 18 equals c squared. And if we solve that down, it's 3 root 2. One way to quickly do these is to say, you know what, 18, I can split that up into something that I know is a square, 9 times 2, because I know 9 is a square. So if
Yeah.
I could factor out a 9 or a 4 or a 16 or a 25 or whatever, I should do that. And then now I can say, oh, the square root of 3, or sorry, the square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 2 is just root 2. There I go. All right, so that's 3 root 2. That's the total distance. And we're doing this the long way.
Okay.
But how about this? Let's talk about finishing it the long way, and then we'll look for a shortcut here.
Yes, please. Okay.
Okay. So this is our distance, and we're going to do our Pythagorean, or we're going to do our proportion here to solve for it, right?
Yep.
To get our distance. So we're going to get 6 root 2 is equal to 3d. So then d is equal to 2 root 2. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's make that actually look like a 2 root 2. And then I have to go 2 root 2 up from here. And that would be like this. And if that's 2 root 2, what are my coordinates going to be? And then I would kind of do my Pythagorean theorem for this to figure it out. I know that it's going to be proportional to the 3 by 3 triangle. So whatever it is, it's going to be like x. It's basically a 45, 45, 90.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's our long way. That's our way of calculating exactly what the points would be. But another way to look at it is, well, what if they said that, what's the point that's the midpoint of PQ? We could do that really easily. The midpoint of PQ, well, what's point P? P is 0, negative 1. And Q is 3, 2. And you know how we said the distance formula is just the Pythagorean theorem?
Mm-hmm.
The midpoint formula is just finding the average. So what's the average x coordinate of 3 and 0?
1.5.
Yeah. And what is the average y coordinate of 2 and negative 1?
1/2.
Yep. So I'm going to put where the midpoint is and say that it's like right here. Okay. My point should be higher and farther than that, right?
Yeah.
But like by a lot or a little?
I like a little.
Yeah, not by much, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm
So
taking notes at the same time.
yeah, no problem.
Okay, you're good.
All right, so what do you think it is based on that? Is it D? No, D is the midpoint. Is it C?
No.
It's way off, right?
Yeah, because we're still on the
2,
same
-1.
plane.
It's
Yeah,
down. Yeah. All right. Is it A?
I like A. I mean, I like B.
Okay. Why don't you like A?
Because it's on the same,
It's way too far over,
yeah,
right?
way
Way
too
too
out.
far on the x-axis. Okay. What about 1, 0? Yeah, that's not the
This-
midpoint either. Yeah.
Yeah, too short.
It's below the midpoint. It's to the left of the midpoint. We want something above and to the right of the midpoint, right?
Yep.
Our midpoint doesn't go quite far enough. Okay. So if we just use the midpoint, we've just cut out all the wrong ones. That's a lot nicer, isn't it?
That was so much nicer. Yeah.
So just becoming an algebra machine that can do, I can do proportions and calculations and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. That is not the optimal way to do a lot of GMAT questions.
Apparently.
So if we look at it and say, okay, how much precision do I actually need? That's actually something that comes up a lot in econ, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much precision did we need here?
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
Yeah, it was sort of like find the spot that you know isn't it, but like can give you, yeah, so find the midpoint. And if we know it's 2/3, we know that's farther than the midpoint. And you can determine, like based on the coordinates in the answer,
I mean, literally,
where that would be.
the precision we needed was any answer that's between our midpoint and our Q there's only one. There's only
Yeah,
one point. There's only one answer choice here that's between Q and the midpoint. That's how much precision we needed. So not too much.
right.
Um,
Do you go into these thinking like big picture wise?
I try to, but sometimes
Yeah.
hammering away at them is what reveals the big picture.
Okay.
Right,
Because
like
this one you definitely could have done like big picture, like just in
super
general, like where's
fast.
like the
Yeah.
half point? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
But I would also say this, like the GMAT generally rewards you for thinking in those terms. And so that is something you want to look at first.
Okay.
I remember there was an average one. And sometimes because the GRE and the GMAT math concepts are so similar, sometimes I will use one from one and one from the other.
Yeah.
I think this was a GRE one. They were asking about averages of home prices. And really all you had to realize is that if you had more home prices above, like you had two home prices,
Mhm.
two different prices. One was higher than the other. If you had more higher prices, it would be above the average, just the midpoint, right? Like
Yeah.
if you take the average of the two prices, you're going to get directly in the middle. Well, if you have more expensive ones, your actual average is a little bit above that. And if you have more inexpensive ones, it pulls your average down. Like that's all you needed. And it's basically like a midpoint situation.
Well, weren't you talking about that, I guess, last week about like mean and median? And there was
Yeah.
that graph that we had where like the majority of the things were in like column C and D. And so
Mhm.
you can infer that that midpoint was in there. Yeah.
Mhm. I think, yeah, like I think the question was like home price of 300,000, so definitely not San Diego, and then a home price of 250,000, and then you would say, well, if there's half of each, right? If it's 50% to 50%, so 50-50, then the average should be 275K.
Yeah.
But if you have more 300K, then it's going to be an answer choice above 275, and if you have more of the 250K, then it's going to be an answer below 275K. And that's really all you needed. You could do this weighted average thing, like the super complicated way, but you
Mhm.
don't have to. If you just realize that, you can get your answer.
And you find that they test like those concepts where you should sort of like that, like you should approach it thinking in like big picture terms.
Yeah,
I
that
guess.
there's a big picture shortcut. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the way I would practice, the way I would recommend practicing
Mm-hmm.
is trying to see both after you go over it, right? Like let's say you miss some questions and then
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out what to do, how to figure it out. Try to see both. The long way, or the way I like to call it is the math teacher way and the test prep way, because the math teacher way is something you can learn from, and it's a good backup to have if you don't see how to do it the test prep way. All right, let's see. Let's go back and look at one more. We'll be picky because we don't have a lot of time. Well, let's see here. Boy, they really like that. Yeah, I think this has a good this is a good option. Rectangular coordinate system, y equals x is the perpendicular bisector of AB. If the coordinates of A are 2, 3, what are the coordinates of C? So they said x equals y, perpendicular segment of or perpendicular bisector of segment AB, and the x-axis is the perpendicular bisector of BC.
So when I heard that, I thought right angle, perpendicular bisector. Am I
Well, the line
thinking?
y equals x is the
Yeah.
perpendicular. What's a perpendicular bisector? It cuts it in half at a right angle,
Yeah.
right? Of segment AB. So this line cuts it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we have point A, then we can at least say this. And I'll put B here just to have something. There's AB.
Yeah.
And, oh, actually, no, if we call it a perpendicular bisector, we can say more. B has to be right here.
Do they have to be equal lengths? Is that what you're saying?
If it's going to be a bisector, or yeah, if it's a bisector, you have to cut it in half.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
And the x-axis is the perpendicular bisector of BC.
Yep.
Let's clean that up a little bit. I'm not going to draw it to scale because I don't want to
Sure.
run out of room. If the coordinates of A are 2, 3, right, let's fill that in. What are the coordinates of point C? What can we do?
Can you just flip A to make B the 3, 2? The coordinate 3, 2?
You wouldn't do that,
Oh, okay.
but you're not far off. We want something that's basically the mirror image of 2, 3 to the line y equals x. So they need to be equidistant.
Right.
So what we could do if we wanted to go the long way is make a little right triangle and do our distance formula from the line y equals x. Figure out our points here. We can do that. I don't want to do that.
Me neither.
So what we're going to do is we're going to think about, okay, well, I guess another way to look at it is you make a little square here. Anyway, why don't we estimate what we think B is based on the fact that 2, 3 is a point and y equals x is the line that it goes through. It's going to be farther right than 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say x is greater than 2. And what's y?
3. Less than 3.
Yeah, let's just go with that. Let's be really like vague.
Mhm.
Okay. What do we know? That helps us with B. What do we know about C then?
If the x-axis is the breaking point, what is it? What do they call it? Oh, bisector.
Mhm.
That they would have to have the same x coordinate.
Yeah. So let's just say X is greater than 2. We don't know a lot. We could get more precise, but we know this, X is greater than 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What about Y?
Definitely have to be less than 3.
Maybe even less than 0.
Yeah,
How come I know that?
because the x-axis is the bisector.
Yeah. So it's got to be on the other side of the X-axis. Good. The way I was going to say it was not as good as the way you just said it. That's good. Okay. So let's just see if that's enough. We didn't do very much, did we?
Mm-mm.
We did real basic stuff. X is greater than 2 because it's farther to the right, and Y is less than 3 because it's under. Okay, fine. And so let's start with the Y is less than 0 because I feel like that's an easy thing to check. What do we think?
Yep.
A is out. It's negative, but we get a -3. That's not right.
Right.
So we want a negative Y. So B is out and E is out. All right. What about C and D? Can we make a choice there?
Well, we said that x was greater than 2. So it can't be 2. It has to be 3.
So we didn't go that deep into this, did we?
No. This is helping me out a lot. You have no idea. I think I'm certainly overcomplicating all of this, and this helps a lot. Just like breaking it down. Like, I know you do this for a living, but like, do you go into it picking out the little pieces and then sort of form, not a
Like,
hypothesis, but like form like your next steps? Like, what are they looking for out of the information that you just pulled out of it?
yeah, what I'll try to do is like, I'll have seen enough of these to where it kind of reminds me of something. And so then there will be a few things that I see, like maybe I want to pull on these threads. And then I'll try to think like which one's going to get me the answer faster or with less stuff to do.
Yeah.
And then I'll go with that. And that is what I want you to get to, but to a lesser extent, because I'm not saying, hey, you got to do this for thousands of hours, for
Right.
years. But if you can get to the point where like maybe you do a lot of these questions the less efficient way, you can still finish in time if you can do a decent percentage of them. Like if you only see 10 to 15% of the shortcuts, that's still really good. And you'll be able to you'll be able to get a high score. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like, and the thing about those shortcuts is you can get good at them, but they're also a little more contingent, right? Like you gotta see certain shortcuts. They just like they're a little harder to pick up on than like, oh well, I can just use the distance formula and calculate things out and do stuff like that. Like that's a little bit safer. It's slower.
Yeah.
So like if I were taking a test and I were to go back and like have infinite time to look at them, there are plenty where I'm like, oh, I could have just done this. I could have done it so much faster. But I can see enough shortcuts, and then I know enough. I know how to do pretty much every single question given enough time, and then I see some percentage of those as shortcuts, and then I can answer them all.
Yeah. I think obviously quant was lacking in the practice test. So that's obviously gonna be like my biggest point gain if I can just like get this
Let's
down.
let's just do this. How about I will point out some things to you and then have you do it,
Okay,
like as homework.
sure.
And the one we just did, yeah, that was a 600 to 700. Yeah. Let's look at this one here. In a rectangular coordinate system, straight line K passes through the points 0, 0, and 3, 2. Which of the following are the coordinates on point K? So,
Oh, of a point. Okay.
that should be in your book, by the way, because the 2020 was changed. I should say wasn't really changed at all for 2021.
Okay. I think, what is the name of that question? Can you scroll up? I think, is there not one? Oh, in a rectangular coordinate system. Okay, let me find that.
So what I'm going to do is just talk about a hint and then leave it to you. And so I'll put it in our notes. All right, what do you think we need here? We probably want to draw stuff out because that helps us see shortcuts on geometry.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do that. And it doesn't need to be beautiful. So I'm
Mhm.
going to put origin and then approximate 3, 2.
3. Here's K. Okay. And then it says find a point. Which of the following are coordinates on point K? Or of a point on K? So
How about this? Here's my hint to you, and we'll see if this will. This is the shortcut to this one. Okay.
okay.
You have to name 2 other points. Now the long way is to say, oh, well, I will use the slope formula, y minus y over x minus x, and I will use that to calculate new points. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we're on the origin, that the origin is one of our points, means that we can do something to find multiple other points, but I just want you to find 2 other points based on the fact that you know 1.00 and 1.32. Another point and then another one. Now you could go down the line or up the line. You can go to the left or to the right. You can go 2 to the right, 2 to the left, whatever. But I want you to try and figure out a way to do that, to get 2 other points without using the slope formula. And if you can't, that's okay. You can use the slope formula and then go from there. But also, I will give you one last hint. The answer choices may give you a hint for how to do what I'm telling you to do.
Yeah, my thought was make it like a proportion.
Tell me.
So like multiply or divide. I was just going to multiply the 3 and the 2 point by 2.
And what would you get?
To get like 6, 4.
So you think 6, 4 would be a point on this line?
Yeah.
Yes. Because it goes through the origin, you can do that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I'll back off here and then you can try and finish it.
Okay.
But yeah, that's it. So, but you still have to name one other point then too. If you got 6, 4, I'll write that down for you.
Okay. Could also do 3, or really anything. So then where I did it like by Not 1/2. What is that proportion? Because I just did a point like right down the line. So from 3, 2, I got 2, 1. Just because the origin is on the line, I just subtracted 1 from each. Is that right?
Tell me what you
No.
got then.
2, 1?
No.
No. Okay. So it is a multiplication thing. It's a proportion thing. Okay.
Well, if 3, 2 is a point,
Mm-hmm.
what would this point over here be?
-3, -2.
Yeah, if it goes through the origin, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then it could be -9 and -6.
Hmm. Oh, I see what you're doing. Yeah. You're saying let's triple it.
Yeah.
Again, you can do that because it goes through the origin. Could we also do 9 and 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only one I found is E that would match what we're doing.
Yeah. There you go.
See, I can do this.
You can just say, hey, the slope is, if you're going from the origin,
Mhm.
the slope's super easy to calculate. It's just whatever the point is. So it's over 3 up 2.
Yeah.
So, or up 2 over 3, I should say. Well, that means I can get the next point by going up 2 over 3. And then the next point by going up 2 over 3. And I could get the point before by going, instead of up 2 over 3, down to back 3.
Yep.
And then the next point down to back 3. So I can do that from any point, but it's really easy when I'm when I'm starting at the origin, because the math is already done for you, right? Because you're doing something minus 0 and something minus 0. Well, great. Okay. So what I would like for you to do is to practice some integrated reasoning,
Mhm.
and then check your work at the Gmat club. Now, don't kill yourself on that, because again, the point is just to get okay. It's just to have an okay score. It doesn't look like, so it doesn't
Yeah.
look weird. Like, does this person not know how to look at data? Just to be reasonable. The most of your time should be spent on the verbal and the quant.
Mhm.
So if you have more of those that you want to go over, you can put them in the folder, in the
Okay.
Google Drive folder, and we can go through some of the ones that you already sent me. But then what I'd like to do is have you guys do one more, because there's another free Gmat practice test, and then we can go over
Mhm.
some of those, and then kind of at the end we'll talk about a plan for a self-study to go forward. So I would say also in the official guide, pick out some stuff you want to work on.
Okay.
Look at question types that are like questions that you already missed that you want to work on, and work on those. So try to do some focused practice there.
Yeah. So when I go and do the ones in the official guide, I usually just start small. So I'll start at the beginning of those questions and then work my way up. I have yet to finish obviously the entire set, because there's like 150 questions per
Oh yeah.
section, right?
Mhm.
Would it behoove me to start like top heavy and then work my way down, do you think?
I would do a sampling.
Okay.
Do some skip around. Do some skip around. Because the idea is to like calibrate it to the right level of difficulty for you.
Right.
And so if you do some and you can do them, then you keep going up in difficulty until you get to the point where it's too hard. If it's far too hard, then you go down. If it's too hard but not too much harder, you go down a little bit. If it's, you're right there, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, but you feel like you
Yeah.
have a good shot each time, then you're in the right place.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right. All right. I'll post all this stuff and then
Cool.
I will see you on Tuesday.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.